Which questions do you guys have that you would like answered about the cloud computing? Well, please introduce yourself.
Jan John, Safety Corporation. We were just wondering that maybe Microsoft has left itself very vulnerable, because with this transition between we're still using XP on all our desktops. So going from XP to Vista to Windows 7, if the cloud comes along soon enough, then basically I've got a zero-cost network computing device talking to the cloud, and where does that leave Microsoft?
So Microsoft appreciates your concern about that. So it's selfless like that, So it's good because actually, if I could abstract that, which happens sometimes in cloud computing, abstract that to like a broader general question is like, what is the implication on, if you will, incumbent players on the move to cloud computing? All right, so that was a great question. Round of applause for the end of the day. You guys come up.
We were talking a little bit about...
please introduce yourself.
My name is Matt Conway. I live at Epitaph. So this question is on a little bit even. She actually did come up with it.
That's good. It's called vendor ventriloquism, and we've seen it many times. It's very good.
Worried about the safety of our data in the cloud.
Oh, nice.
Protecting it. What happens if it goes away, or a company that's hosting it dissipates? What do we do that?
Very nice. Safety, that's nice. We're going to, because at the end of the room, we got some security answers, right? Now, this group right here, what did we come up with? Rachel, are you the designated? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a junior here at OIL2.
Round of applause, Rachel!
And we were wondering, what else do we need to make cloud computing work? For example, like access everywhere, wireless everywhere. It's not here yet.
Okay, all right, very good. Right, thank you very much. Right. So you mean cloud isn't the total answer right now? I mean, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Jill Hurst Wall, Syracuse University. So I want to know who's powering, and I do mean literally powering the cloud. I mean, if there's a power outage, do we lose the entire cloud?
Nice, good question.
Tsunami, whatever.
Right. All right, good question, great question. Thank you. Good. All right, this group up here, what did you guys come up with?
Came up with
4, all overachievers. This front row. This is an undergraduate program here. Please introduce yourself. Right?
Dee Magnoni from Olin. Let's see, choose one. Redundancy of backup and storage in the cloud.
Backup and storage. But no, the one thing about the cloud is it's infinitely scalable. So like you have 4 answers, right? So we'll grab them all, if you will. And we'll have them as our own thoughts later on. Because it's not plagiarism, it's reuse. It's reuse, right? So what were the other 4?
Oh, well, I don't want to. Let's see. Security, which is already covered.
Right.
How easy is it to scale? And then metrics in the cloud, when to measure.
So metrics in the cloud. Okay, metrics in the cloud. Super. All right, round of applause. Thank you. You guys did not better. Yes, sir. And please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Kevin Simon. I'm a sophomore here at Olin College. And my question ties back to sustainability.
Our question.
Our question.
Want due credit.
He's learning leadership early.
So with large-scale computing, we have facilities that use large amounts of energy and occasionally harm natural resources, such as using rivers to cool server farms. And the question is how do you see cloud computing having an impact on the sustainability of large-scale computing?
Nice. Very wow. Nice. Your team. I will tell you. What we also saw, the great thing is we are actually this is a microcosm of the innovation universe. And those of you who remember John Perry Barlow, who basically was a very interesting guy, wrote a lyricist for the Grateful Dead, but he basically said and he's having he's a boomer and he's having a conversation with the next one. He says, "You hate us, don't you?" So we're going to talk about one of the things we're going to be talking about throughout the day is like this whole, or tomorrow as well, is like this generational conflict or opportunity for rapprochement. I guess that's a good one. Right, what do we come up with here?
Sure. How long? I'm an entrepreneur.
Freshly retired, right?
Freshly retired entrepreneur. So our question was, how do you think the cloud is going to affect consumers in terms of what is actually going to run from your house versus what services are going to be remoted to you from the cloud? So how's it going to affect your everyday life?
Nicely done, nicely done. All right, we're now coming back here, you know, to the serial entrepreneurs, you know, who look amazingly young for men as aged as you.
I'm Gordon Brooks, recently semi-retired, about 21 days ago. So, you know, I've worked with a lot of software companies that have legacy systems. So what's the strategy, hybrid strategy for legacy software companies?
Nice question. These are great questions. Nicely done. All right, all right. Round of applause for you guys. Nicely done. And now what I'd like to do is have our panel sort of introduce themselves, because these are very interesting companies that you may not, well, I think you've heard of one, but you probably haven't heard of all of them. So, like, you know, Doug, can I ask you to start off, and then we'll go linearly here?
Sure. My name is Doug Lane. I'm with a company called Virtual Computer here in the Boston area. We're actually based in Westford. And our focus is really on applying new technology that's actually at the foundation of the cloud called virtualization to kind of the age-old problem of managing and maintaining secure corporate PCs in an organization. So a lot of folks are looking at virtualization as a way to both create and run desktops in the cloud. Our approach is actually a little bit different. It is in fact a hybrid approach where we create desktops in the cloud, but they're virtual desktops that can continue to run on traditional PC platforms. So it kind of gives you the future from the standpoint of how you go about creating, updating, maintaining, providing security and policy around these desktops, but it doesn't kind of radically change everything from moving from laptops that everybody uses today to this kind of nebulous model where every desktop runs in the cloud. So that's what we're all about. And you know, this is my second OIL panel, so I'm very happy to be back around time again. It was a great time last time.
Super. All right. Now, if I could, now one of the things that as you do is actually you guys give good Google, if you will. So I mean, you look up virtual computer. I'm very, very interested. But like one of the things that you talk about bare metal virtualization, is that right? Or bare metal?
Yeah, hypervisor technology.
So like, would you explain what's going on there?
Sure. So I think the thing that really has made cloud computing possible is at its core virtualization, which is in essence taking what in the past was a physical piece of hardware, whether a laptop or a PC or a server, and turning it into one physical device that can run many virtual instances. In the process, those virtual instances become much easier to kind of move around. So that's kind of what cloud computing is all about. You have this massive infrastructure, and rather than somebody having their own physical server sitting in the data center, you give them a virtual server that can easily be backed up, moved around, moved from one location to another. So what we've done is we use server virtualization hypervisor technology in a data center or in a cloud environment to create these virtual copies of, say, Windows XP or Windows 7, whatever the case may be. But we've taken that bare metal hypervisor concept and applied it to the PC itself, and that's what allows us to then take the desktop out of the data center and allow it to run on the PC that's in front of you while still maintaining a heartbeat back to that cloud infrastructure or data center environment that you're accustomed to using.
Super, thank you. All right, our next speaker, John Sekovich, I just want to say, is like, now I know there's some venture capitalists in the room, all right? You know, so the one great thing about John Sekovich is like, he is actually a great predictor of where the next bag of money is, right? because I knew John, when there were just egregious profits to be made in systems integrator, he was sitting there as a systems integrator, right? You know, when they were just, you know, basically like just scooping up with a front end loader, right? You know, the money in if you will security, there was John, right? You know, so now John is now he's sort of like in e-commerce and multi-channel marketing, and in a very interesting organization. So where John goes, money follows. So it's a good thing. But tell us about Digital River, John. What's going on there?
My name's John Sekovich. I run a business unit within Digital River that's oriented towards consumer electronics, but that's about 10% of Digital River. Digital River got its start, you know, basically working with software companies and helping them sell online to consumers, being able to download software on a worldwide basis. It's very complicated to do business. You know, we have an orientation around the U.S. and it's all U.S. dollars, it's all English, it's all, you know, pretty much international credit cards. You know, so it's very simple. We don't have an appreciation for what it's like to try to do commerce, you know, in Europe, in 29 different countries in Europe, Asia, and certainly in South America. And so we help companies to be able to put the infrastructure together to be able to support that technology-wise. and also business process-wise. We're doing about $9 billion of e-commerce with our clients today. And it's just...
And nobody's ever heard of you.
Exactly.
And they're from Minnesota. A hotbed of software, you know.
Powered by Digital River. That's what we have to start putting our...
Digital River inside. Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Super. All right. Thank you. All right. So now, Nick. I mean, this is a company. Fine. Somebody we've heard of. All right. You know. Nick, tell us where you're working and what's going on there.
I didn't get a flowery introduction.
Oh, that's because you guys are trading at a multiple. That's right.
My name's Nick Otto, and up until a few months ago, I ran global IT infrastructure for Red Hat. So I'm on the corporate side of the company, and I currently run all IT business systems, so the other half of IT within the company. From the cloud computing side, it's very interesting, my job, because I have to consume what Red Hat's putting out, and I have to consume it long before you as a consumer, or our consumers are the businesses, right, long before you see it. And also, if you've seen recent announcements, underneath the covers of IBM and some of the other big cloud providers, Red Hat is the technology that's driving a lot of the virtualization in the layer of the cloud. You know, we're heavily involved in Zen and KVM and the other things that are actually making the cloud work. So my perspective is going to be one of a corporate consumer of cloud services, a corporate builder of internal private clouds, and then also supporting an engineering department that's developing core cloud technologies.
Super. All right. Now, if I could, all right, I'd put you guys on the spot a bit. All right. If cloud computing is the answer, what's the question?
How can you make IT more flexible?
Okay. No. Okay, thanks. That's perfect because I wanted to jump in. It's like you're actually moving. You're working in this environment. So it's not hype. It's like what are your customers telling you? When you look in the eyes of customers, I mean, what do they say? I mean, it's not like I said, I'm a little low on clouds. Can you fix me up? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I think, you know, in general, companies are faced with more complex applications of IT technology than they've ever been in the past. And I think where a lot of them have gotten to are that they need to maintain control and order over the IT infrastructure. But as more and more business moves into online applications and other systems, business users are putting more demands on them. And the answer of, you know, we can stand a server up for you through our process over the course of the next 6 months doesn't fly. And in turn, users start to do their own things and everything kind of gets out of control. So I think where cloud computing comes into play is it gives the IT organization the ability to easily, quickly, and with some kind of method to the madness, tap into more resources and deploy them for end users quickly. I think, you know, often cost is raised as the driver, but as I've talked to a lot of IT folks, in many cases it's that the time and responsiveness is kind of the biggest control factor that's often driving it.
Super. All right, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say the other thing I think that's happening is the fact that the IT resources are being spent a lot more on the revenue side of the business and in the interaction with the customers, and the customers are not necessarily sitting still with just, you know, satisfied with their desktops.
So you said the IT resources are being spent a lot more on the revenue side of the business. Now, what exactly are you meaning there?
Well, from that standpoint, I mean, you know, the part of the business, the customer interaction, whether or not that's going to business-to-business orientation or business-to-consumer orientation, as compared to trying to drive more efficiency into the back office, but more, driving revenue into the organization and communicating with the outside world as compared to the inside.
Nice. Now, you actually were the infrastructure guy, right? You know, and so like your first experience with cloud. I mean, when did you first? You know, I mean, when you first met cloud, what was that like? Yes, sir, I am.
So, I don't think.
I mean, what? It followed me home. Can I keep it?
I don't think it's all that new. And you know, this might be the part that is bubble bursting.
Spoken like an infrastructure guy. I've seen it before.
But it depends on which clouds you're talking about, right? Everybody talks generically about the cloud, but you know, there's the infrastructure cloud and the platform cloud and the software as a service cloud and hybrid clouds and private clouds and public clouds. And the answer to that question depends on what problem you're trying to solve. If you're an HBlock shop, just
so it's like phone sex.
The
cloud is phone sex.
So if you're a legacy infrastructure shop, maybe there's value in going to the cloud. If you're already built out on the dynamic infrastructure, then the shift between something like ODCS and cloud is no big shift. It's just a relay.
So it's a natural extension of like trend. I mean, so they do ask. I mean, unfortunately, this is an analyst, sort of a fourth. Is it revolutionary or evolutionary? And you're telling us it's evolutionary, right?
Because my first experience with the cloud was ODCS 6 or 7 years ago. IBM out of Boulder, right? Which was kind of touted as a really cloud infrastructure, and it had its issues, right? Scaling issues and things like that. So it's definitely evolutionary, but I certainly think it depends on which cloud.
Well, how many clouds are there? I mean, are there?
Well,
I remember recently, as late as 2008, on Sand Hill Road, they did a big, which is where all the VCs, are, all the ethically challenged VCs are headquartered. I mean, nobody in this room anyway. But so they all came together and they had this big and they basically did a poll. They actually found that there were 25 fundamentally different definitions of cloud computing. So there's a lot. But all right, let's break it down to if you were an entrepreneur or you were a CIO. How should you be thinking about the cloud and what's going on there? I'll just jump all that to the group here.
So I think, if you're, I'll start with an entrepreneur since, that's kind of been our experience as a startup, where one of the things that's great about the cloud, and maybe in this case I'm talking more about the public cloud than, an Amazon or Rackspace or Google, something like that, is that it's kind of the great equalizer in that, there's a time, not that long ago where if you as a startup wanted to build a company and a product around infrastructure and services, you really had to go out and raise hundreds of millions of dollars to do that, which not everyone can really do that easily, if at all. Whereas with cloud infrastructure, it opens up more of a pay-as-you-go type model where literally anybody with an Amazon account can spin up a server or 100 servers in the next 20 minutes or so. And if you're a company that has an interesting concept that needs to scale, it's really something that opens up a whole bunch of new doors for you, and you can actually only have to pay for that infrastructure when you've collected it from a customer on the back end. You don't have to invest in hundreds of millions of infrastructure only to have the hope that someday you'll be able to sell some services to customers that allow you to recoup.
Sorry, I want to kid you, but that's awesome. Because this is, here we are at the Olin Innovation Lab. We're really talking about, the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship. It's this actually has changed the entrepreneurial game, because it used to be you had to get your VC to fund your infrastructure on an ex-ante basis. And now it's basically, if they come, you can actually scale to that opportunity, right? So you can actually, so they're now looking at not can I pay for the infrastructure? It's does the idea that more at the experiment?
Exactly, and I think there's actually, there's some examples of companies here in the Boston area like Akamai, which are very successful infrastructure companies. They had to invest a significant amount of money to build that infrastructure back in late 90s or when they got started. There are companies now that are doing similar things where they're just running the whole infrastructure in multiple cloud providers. So they go buy cloud capacity from anyone they can get it from, whether it's Amazon or Rackspace or Microsoft or whoever, and then they're kind of an overlay on top of that doing very similar things. So just in that decade, effectively, that whole model has shifted for infrastructure-based services.
So John, and you spend a lot of time with consumer electronics. You run that division and everything. And so how is this changing their world? I mean, are there going to be cloud-specific devices, or what's going on? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you spend a lot of time with the Dutch, or certain Dutch consumer electronics. But I don't know. You can mention their name or not, or some of you might guess.
$40 billion Philips organization. But anyhow, I think that you're going to see that from the electronics, the manufacturers themselves, and the device, and the things that you probably saw if you paid attention at all to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas starting this year. But I think the whole thing is that global is the name of the game, and you're not going to get there unless you have this type of capability. It's very difficult for a company to do this themselves, with the types of technology that have been in place in the past. And so for them to be able to get to Europe and get to Asia and to take advantage of the market opportunities represented there, this is the type of technology. On the other hand, we're just in the process of implementing SAP, and of course SAP is one of those that's not.
It's German, respect me. It's not a sponsor, never will be a sponsor. The depth of innovation, SAP.
How do you really feel?
Oh, we're taping, sorry.
Challenge nonetheless.
No, Nick, moving on. Another one of my titles was litigant. Moving on, Nick, so there's this whole idea of like open, the software that, so we're just trying to digest, get our heads around that, and now we get slammed into this cloud thing. How does open bump into the cloud? Or it just means like, ooh, who knows where your data is,
Well, no, I think it's a really good question, right? Because there's two elements to open, and one's kind of what our lifeblood is, which is open source. Right, the other, and this is extremely essential to clouds, is open standards. And so if you look at some of the different big cloud providers, some of them have some very, very proprietary hooks into their cloud and how it works. I mean, like Force.com, right? Very, very proprietary. You build your infrastructure in Force. You're not going to move it to EC2. You're not going to move it to IBM's cloud. You're going to be kind of stuck within Force.com, where some of the cloud providers are adopting the open standards approach. Now, open source, I'm not sure how applicable that is to the cloud. We're big proponents of cloud computing. That's part of why I switched from infrastructure to apps, right? I kind of see my job is moving to the cloud, especially since we're helping build some large clouds for other companies.
Can I jump in just a second? Forgive me, but when you say my job is moving to the cloud, I'm not certain I want to tell my mom that. What does that mean?
Well, the infrastructure guy's job is no longer going to be racking and stacking, right? I mean, over the last 15 years of running infrastructure, I have fewer and fewer and fewer people dealing with racking and stacking. They're dealing with information security and SOX audits and PCI audits and corporate compliance and governance and oversight, and the percentage of staff actually doing sysadmin work's reducing. And also what comes with cloud is not just the scalability and flexibility, but it's all the automation of services that are now commoditized. So whether you go cloud or not, the cloud movement is creating automation that will obsolete the infrastructure jobs anyway. So you can roll the gear in. A lot of providers have gear you can roll in where you don't need all those traditional sysadmin jobs. So cloud doesn't get you automation well. So I think that's where my view on that piece of it. Right?
Like now, when you're talking to customers, I mean, what are they? Their big concerns. I mean, we got a great, if you will, quorum of like what people were talking about. What are your customers? What are their sort of like? Well, okay, I hear it's important, but what's their sort of pushback to you? What are they telling you?
There's definitely like a number one here, and that's the number one thing I've heard from people thinking about the cloud is if I put my data in my systems in the cloud, how can I get them back again? Because I think that's a lot of the yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think
But that's a great thing if you're being subpoenaed. Well, I don't know what happened. You find it. I don't know what else.
There's an upside.
So I think that's actually an area that there's ripe for some innovation. I think we have somebody from CloudSwitch here tomorrow, right? And that's actually where they're focused on is kind of being an intermediary between these different cloud providers. And I think that's definitely the number one is that people are seeing the benefit of moving to the cloud, but the two aspects are they want to have the safety net of being able to get it back, and maybe even a step further is they don't want to just go cold turkey to the cloud. They're going to have physical data center infrastructure and cloud infrastructure, and they want the two to kind of tie together seamlessly. And not any of none of the cloud providers are really inherently doing that. They're all just saying, hey, we'll make it really easy for you to try some of the candy, and then once you're in, you're in.
So we are. They're users and pushers again.
Yeah,
exactly. One of the things that, this is just a heads up in case, any of your companies are participating in these types of activities, but Nick talked about the InfoSec, talked about PCI compliance, talked about SOX. The way companies are trying to protect themselves is is through the contracts that, that get executed. Ours are very sophisticated contracts in order to support this type of thing. You would be surprised to see the number of contracts that have all of these stringent SLAs in them that are never monitored by the organization. It's like it happens, during the contract phase, and then it goes away. And this is something that has to stop, because that's where the diligence needs to be taking place.
I'm behind on my initialisms. What's SLA?
Well, I'm sorry, the service level agreement.
Oh, great.
In this type of environment, it almost becomes legal.
Well, it almost certainly goes away because the customer is happy, right? When you call out the contract, only when the customer isn't very happy with what they're getting. So the fact that it never comes up again probably means things are going okay.
Yeah, maybe.
It will come up again.
Sure.
Customer satisfaction is a status at a point in time.
To follow on the compliance and the audit standpoint, if you're a global company, think about where your data can and can't live in the global market. I mean, I work for a company where my data and my bids cannot be in certain countries; they're blacklisted, right? And when I sit down with Google, and I spent some time with Google recently, and IBM and Force. I mean, I've been through the whole cloud scenario, and we have contract discussions around, well, how do you guarantee me my bids are never going to be in your infrastructure in that data center that's an extension of your cloud in the country where I can't be? And it becomes very, very complicated to have that cloud discussion around where are my bits and where do they live. Now, Akamai can figure that out because they've been in this business for a long time, but a lot of cloud providers can't. They can't tell you specifically that your bits are never going to live in that specific country. And it creates some very interesting conversations around PCI compliance and SOX compliance about where that data is, where it lives, what country it's in, how you stay compliant with laws and regulations, and that becomes, I think, harder, much, much harder than the technology. Cloud technology is easy.
And in terms of indemnification, that's still your confidential information, just because you've outsourced it to somebody else. And,
You'll still go to jail.
No magic.
Send the cloud to jail. Send the cloud to jail.
We still use the analogy that ROI means risk of incarceration.
Finally, a TLA, a three-letter acronym I can use. There we go. All right, that's everybody's takeaway this evening. Very good. Now, if I could, gentlemen, I mean, we're just about done with the panel. I think. Thank you so much. These guys are really, really good sports because they knew they were going to set up as a digestive aid. I really do appreciate you guys being good sports, but you did chum the market. But now, if you had questions for the audience that we can actually think about both this evening and tomorrow, what would the questions for the audience be?
So I guess one question I have is when you think about your PC, how much of it is you being excited about the operating environment and how much of it is being excited about the device itself? Because I think one of the open questions I see about cloud computing with respect to the desktop in particular is that people in general are somewhat attached to Windows or Mac OS or where their environment is and how they have it set up. But I also think people kind of tangibly like the device itself, and they like a cooler looking PC versus not. If everything moved into the cloud and devices were kind of irrelevant at that point, is that a world where people see this all going, or do you think there's going to be kind of a renaissance of kind of these distributed devices we all use for computing, and specifically PCs, not so much iPhones and iPads and things like that?
That's a good question, right, John?
The other one, the one I would have is, what opportunities are available to you outside of the U.S. That this type of technology can help you take advantage of sooner rather than later?
Oh, nice. No, because historically, one of the reasons is cloud computing actually gets you to international a whole lot faster than actually do a on-premises, a greenfield build-out, right? So nice. So you can all even spend. That's what's interesting for the entrepreneurs because you're now a global player. Nice. Great question.
I actually have an example of that. We're a software company and we have customers download the software from our website. There was a day a couple weeks ago where I was talking to somebody in the kitchen at lunchtime, and they said, it's taking a long time for the UK customers to download it. And I was like, well, why don't we just throw it up in Amazon Cloud in the UK? And by the end of that day, we actually had a second download set up. So.
Nice.
There's other alternatives.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I hate it when panelists start humping each other.
That's your job.
I think my question is going to be more of the trust and the business side of things, having had to set through arbitration and all those good things that happen to infrastructure guys. Is what level of trust are you willing to take outside of your trust and resiliency are you willing to move from your company's control into the cloud and think about large regionally disruptive type events? And we haven't had one in quite a while, but when too much gets into the cloud and you're dependent upon the cloud for your business operations, what are you going to do when half the country is down for 2 days, or you can't get to certain parts of the world because of cable cuts and other things like that, right? What level of resiliency are you willing to give up, and what's your survival tactics under the code? Really, really think about BCP.
It's very, very important, yeah. Because it's interesting because somebody actually was on a panel of luminaries such as yourself, gentlemen, and somebody said no, seriously, and they said well, what's going to happen? Because we rely on this type of stuff, and sometimes it just doesn't work, right? They said well, there's snow days for kids, so there are cloud days for. But let's give a round of applause for Joe.